welcome back to day 3 of Rise. Did you know that Georgian College is the only Canadian college to receive the Changemaker campus designation from Ashoka U? I didn't know either. This means that changemaking and social innovation are weaved into the fabric of everything we do at the college. I'm excited to introduce our next speakers from Georgian Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation. Today, we have Nicole Norris, who is the manager of the center. She works alongside a team of talented changemakers to inspire and equip students, faculty, and community members with the tools and attitudes they feel need to design social impact into their business models. She is a graduate of the Master's in Strategic Foresight and Innovation from OCAD University and believes that tools that we use design our future matter. Laura Koza is also joining us, and she's a Social Innovation Project Assistant. She's passionate about the work that she does and believes everybody has the capacity to be a change maker, even you. Adam Dagenais is the center's community animator, which means he helps design, develop, and deliver messaging and programming that surrounds the idea of change making within the Georgian College community and beyond. His work is incredible. Their discussion is about change making in the digital era, as well as its relationship to COVID. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Amanda. So great to be here, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity and all the incredible work that's going on behind the scenes. We had an awesome opportunity to chat with all these amazing people that are making Rise Day happen. So really glad to be part of it. And so today we're going to talk to you a little bit about something we called Evolve More. And this is what we really had to do. I think it's a great theme and topic for the era. As we go forward, and you see on our next slide, Amanda already touched on this, so we are the first and only Canadian college to receive the Ashoka Campus Changemaker designation, which kind of sets the bar pretty high because it means that we actually have to graduate these shift disturbers that are going to go out into the world and change it for the positive. So that's definitely a tall order. But you know what? On the next slide, you'll see it's not the tallest order we have because we're actually one of the 3 innovation centers here at Georgian. And you can see here that by Rise Day, that sort of celebrates how these innovation centers work together, how we collaborate, and how we're looking out for ecosystem of Georgian under the inspired innovation pillar. So just to give you a little bit of introduction about the center before we get started, I'm going to go to the next slide and talk to you just a little bit of a snapshot. We have sort of very diverse programming. It runs deep and it runs wide. And in fact, we deal in the ecosystem from with the Simcoe County's District School Board, kindergarten all the way up to Georgian students right out into the community. And you can see that we have these sort of different programs that we work on where we're building social enterprise capacity, we're building changemaker innovation skill set capacity. We have educator and resources tools that we work with, again, to build those capacities. And as well, on a global stage, we're working with global partners around building these concepts of the flourishing future. And so really excited to work with a talented bunch of changemakers, which I have on the screen today. And we're going to talk to you about something that we had to do this year. As we hit COVID, and like everybody else, we ran into the same issues where a lot of our program is highly participatory, it's transdisciplinary, it's in-person learning. And guess what? We can't do that anymore, hence Rise Days on this amazing platform. So we're going to talk to you something about today about this thing called Changemaker and Residency Week. And I'm going to get we to flip to the next slide and talk to you a little bit what we had to do here. Once COVID sort of locked us down and we were sort of all in our pandemic life, we had to start to look at how we could potentially shift and change. And we identified at the center that we have a lot of tools and resources that we teach. And so how do we turn those inward now and sort of work on how we're going to shift and change? And then we said, well, you know what, if we have to do this, I bet you there's a ton of other people out there that have to do the same. So we decided that maybe there's something that we could do that we could bring everybody into the fold, work on this together, prototype some ideas on how to shift into digital delivery. And we realized that there was a ton of partners out there. And so Changemaker and Residency Week was an exploration that we tried. We feel we're successful, a collaboration with all of these individuals, all of these departments across our ecosystem, and to teach 21st century skills in a digital context, all in remote conversation around the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so one of the first things we had to do was we had to look at how do we do this? And how do we deliver a highly participatory engagement with tools and resources that we had? And so one of the first things I did is I had to lean on Laura Koza, and say, Laura, you know, all those great facilitation things that you do, I mean, you're a ninja at facilitation. How do we do this? We had to go from, I can't be in the room with you, to I actually have to deliver it online. And so this 21st century skill set that we're talking about, we really leaned on you, Laura. So I'm going to throw it over to you and say, okay, we got to do this. How do we do it?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think back to a year ago when we sort of started, we were in this virtual reality and trying to shift and change mindsets to really foster connection in this virtual space. So one really amazing opportunity we have with the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation is to participate in these workshops, which, as Nicole said, are highly engaging, and we can feel that energy in the room. And it's all about how do we really create this vulnerable and safe space for participants to be able to look inward and help them self-identify as change makers and build those competencies and use those tools, as Nicole was talking about. This is a really big challenge for us in the virtual space because there's so much beautiful energy that happens around change making. And we wanted to make sure that we were capturing that in a really authentic way. So for us, it was this, how do we get that feedback from people that you would get when you're in a room, whether it's the smiles or the bright eyes or the bored faces or whatever it might be, all of that feedback that you're naturally getting being in the same space. We really needed to look at how do we translate that into a virtual environment. Great opportunities to engage in lots of different tools, which I will let Adam talk to next, but to really foster this feedback for our facilitators so we could leverage that energy in the room and create some of these spaces that are centered around psychological safety, which promote people to be able to sort of lean into those vulnerable concepts and look at how do they identify and what does that look like for them as people to grow in the change-making space.
What Laura's talking about was replicating and duplicating those feedbacks so our students felt as if these human skills that they had to now translate into the digital space could work. And as you can see, this is some data that we got back. So Changemaker and Residency Week happened in the fall semester during week 9 of November, and we just actually had it 2 weeks ago. And what it did is it drove approximately 600 to 700 students through a 5-week, 10-day experience where they had an opportunity to do interactive workshops online using a platform called Mural, replicating and duplicating some of our facilitation processes to teach them and amplify for them our change-making skills, which is empathy, collaboration, communication, and leadership. These are all 21st century human skills that are being identified by employers of the future. And so translating that into a digital environment, this was our outcome. So we had to sort of really look at how we did that and engage with that. We also had to run into the context that a lot of these students were in a co-op recovery mode, which means that what they were working through is they didn't have the opportunity to go out because of the conditions of the pandemic. So how could we replicate and duplicate experiential learning that would also relate to their job skills of the future? We did find that Sentiment Value said that based upon the workshops they went through, the experience that we were able to create and build, they were able to actually relate and see how working on these human skills could actually relate in a digital world in the future of work to what they were doing. So to the testament to Laura, and Laura, I know we had a lot of conversations about moving into this space, and we had to really heavily lean on Mr. Adam Dagenais over here, who does have an incredible background, taking your vision of how experiential learning has to happen, and how do we actually translate that into not only the workshop space, but also into the total experience of Changemaker and Residency Week. And so I'm just going to flip it quickly over to Adam and talk to us a little bit on the next slide about all the technology and why we did this the way we did.
Hello, Adam here, the community animator for the Center for Changemaking and Social Innovation. Long-time listener, first-time caller today. And just like Nicole leaned on Laura's skill set, then Laura then leaned on my skill set and said, hey, we have all these amazing things that we want to deliver. How do we do it in this digital space? And thus, the self-proclaimed digital wizard was born, a veritable Dr. Frankenstein of tech stacking. So when we were posed this challenge, the big thing was the engagement. How do we get the excitement and the energy that Laura was talking about that we had when we were in classrooms and dealing with real students? What did that look like? How did that translate into this digital space? So you can see in the slide, we used a whole plethora of different platforms when we did this. The main pivoting part of this digital collaboration piece being the mural space that we promoted and that we chose to latch onto and worked great for it, the way we decided to kind of start building our programming moving forward. Mural being a nice digital whiteboard interactive space where you can interact as basically as using sticky notes all the way to creating interactive games and types of things like that as well. So by stitching all these things together is how we were able to build something very unique and very much off the shelf. We did look around and tried to find something prepackaged that would work for everything we needed to do, and it just didn't exist. So it really pushed us into this space where how do we stitch these things together and make them do what we need to do, and how do we accomplish what we set it to do, is like get the message across, but also stay entertaining and engaging and get that messaging across. So that was the space that we were in.
And that's a good point, Adam, because one of the things we had was we had a lot of debates about platforms and how do we use them and how do we stack them, how do we put them together. And one of the things we really wanted to do was recognize too that we would have community partners attending these events as well too. And they were facing a lot of the same challenges. So was there a way that we could show what is possible with what is out there? This idea that it really got down to this concept of wrapping the technology around the human, as opposed to, going to a platform and saying, we have to now adapt to that logic model that platform had. It was a lot harder, but really staying key to this idea that you saw the competencies that we had to build, like those human skills, like empathy, collaboration, teamwork, innovation, prototyping, and recognizing that we didn't have a lot of budget to work with. So what could we do and sort of set an example with the community to show how we could create community, how we can mobilize, and what that would do to our model. As you can see here on this matrix, what we were really looking at is, okay, so maybe we could start lumping together platforms where we needed high engagement with all stakeholders to low use with sort of minimal stakeholders. And so what we did is we started to look at that, and then we used work automation to do this. Because remember, the other thing too is we don't have any coders on the team. Zero. That was really, really important. And I know, Laura, we had a lot of conversations back and forth. Are we going to overwhelm people? Cognitive loads? How do we actually really move this forward? And we've learned a lot through this process about how information has to be translated in a digital context. And Laura, I know that you talk a lot about this around with language and accessibility. What were some of your biggest feedbacks that you saw as we sort of went through this? Because I know this was a big concern for all of us.
That's such an important point, Nicole, because as we started adding all these texts, my big worry was that we would start overwhelming people and we would lose that human connection, and we would be battling that anxiety around learning the tech, opposed to opening up this safe and vulnerable and exciting space where we can really dig into some of these tools and mindsets. And what I will say is specifically our students are eager to learn and they get it. And as long as the tech is stacked well and you build in that time to explain it, and we sort of foster that accessible language learning and also alternative plans for people who might not get it. It was exciting and it really added to the experience, which is big for me to say. For those who have personal history with me, I am not amazing with technology. And I was the first to sort of see all these amazing benefits with what offering these specific platforms could do to creating that space that we are so thrive in.
These are some of the themes that we started to realize that as we really focus. So we had hours and hours of journey mapping before we even decided the tech. Poor Adam, he knows what this was all about. He's like, oh my God, Nicole, I can't have another hour. I can't do another hour of journey mapping on Mural with sticky notes. But what we were trying to really do is we were trying to really figure out, and we did a lot of prototyping before we got to Changemaker and Residency Week and built the workshops we did. Anybody who wanted to do a workshop with us, anybody who wanted to play with us, we brought you in and probably broke you a little bit because we were breaking ourselves. But the outcome that we felt was by really focusing on using the tools that we use to create innovation, which is the human-centered journey, we were able to believe that we got these outcomes. So students felt connected, and we have this data. So students did solicit that they felt connected and passionate, and they loved the networking aspect. Because what happened is they would see their colleagues and they'd be working with them over and over again throughout the week. We had a lot of staff and administrators join us, and they actually started to see how you were able to collaborate and see how it was actually mapping over to some of the issues they were having in their departments. And this silo busting that we saw with collaboration. Partners, this was really important for our partners, and we saw this in the data that partners were saying, hey man, Georgian's doing this with off-the-shelf stuff. How are they doing it? And so I think it gave a lot of partners confidence as we went through, and we saw that in the data. And faculty, it was fostering creativity to sort of, in a time when they were really overloaded and, oh my God, our poor faculty were going through all this stuff. And faculty that were attending were starting to see like, okay, there is something that they can do, and they're stepping out there to try it. And, in terms of what we've learned from this, I think, it really was a trial by fire. But really, the goal was to see what was possible. And how did it change our center? Well, it changed our center in a lot of ways. And Adam, I was going to say, like, your biggest takeaway, because we threw you in, and I'm like, you become our tech master. And so what were some of the biggest takeaways you took away with sort of the model?
Yeah, it was this beautiful space where we had this whole laundry list of problems and things we needed to translate, and it just became this awesome, like, taking puzzle pieces and putting them together, like, oh, this doesn't fit, so let's try this app, and that solves this problem, and then how can we stitch onto this one? That was this amazing space in the true innovation sense, like, where that got to happen in real time and again. So solving these numerous problems using this tech that was available, and some stuck and some completely exploded, and that was okay too, because we went in with the authenticity that the space we were in was completely uncharted for everybody, the people participating and us running it. So we loaded, when we went in and ran things, that was where we were at. We were essentially, everyone was along for this prototyping type of journey with us, and it made for a really cool collaborative space. And it was okay to fail. We came up with some awesome solutions to some stuff, and we crossed some things way off the list. And some things we had huge expectations for, but we had to completely shelf them, or they fell right to the wayside because of the space we were in as well. So it was cool to really acknowledge that. And I think my biggest takeaway was the amazingness, that the adaptability of the participants and the students in it. So considering the platform and working in the digital space was entirely new for everybody at the time when we ran the first CRW, that the people picked up the platforms like no problem, like second nature. I was so worried about these long videos and stuff teaching, but it was really cool to see how quickly everyone grabbed the stuff and ran with it. So.
Yeah. And Laura, I know looks like we're crushing in on time here, because here's the amazing Amanda back to talk to us. Just maybe a last sentiment from you, being our people person. You always hold the human at the center for us. And you're always like, what about the student? What about the faculty? From your perspective, from some of the things that you saw.
I think you guys hit all the most beautiful points. And the only thing I would like to add is this really great perspective that I think it was so empowering for us as a team to walk the walk in the skills, mindsets, processes, frameworks that we teach and care so passionately about. So as Adam said, it was a really great opportunity for us to be open to failure. It was a really great opportunity for us to showcase empathy and connection towards the system. It was a really great us to really use that human-centered design thinking framework, which we so deeply believe in, to create something that we felt could have impact on the system, and just offer so much gratitude for people today to listen, but also for anybody who did engage with us and sort of jump on the deep end with us.
So lessons were human first, wrap the tech around the human, and it works itself out. And I saw Mira had a question in the chat here about those 21st century future skills, or I don't want to call them future skills. I want to call them 21st century human skills. And I would say, Mira, to answer your question deeply, I think empathy and the ability to meet people where they're at and understand people are all coming in from different dimensions, this ability to have collaborative dialogue in safe spaces, you can achieve anything. Because when you remove the barriers of where people think they're going to fail, giving them the confidence to know that it's okay, and to have the empathy that when we do, that we did it with intention. I don't know if that's a long-winded answer, but I think that's really important, especially as we move into the digital space, so that we recognize that tech can do harm if we're not understanding all the different diversities of cultures and humans that are involved in it.
Thank you so much, Nicole, Laura, and Adam. That was such a great presentation. And just thank you for the opportunity to have that collaborative space to have these discussions. I really liked how you are trying to draw in a whole bunch of range of people and using whatever methods you can, and you're not afraid to fail. That's one cool thing about research, is that you have the opportunity to fail. You have the opportunity to perfect your data, your next approach the next time you do it. But until you try it, you never know what's going to happen. Right? So kudos to you, and thank you for answering that question. So I'm always amazed at what Changemaking and Social Innovation are doing for research these days. I'm a traditional researcher, so I'm used to my quantitative measures, maybe throw in an interview or a focus group, but these guys are outside of the box. And stay tuned. You never know what's going to come out of that group, but it's always something amazing and collaborative. So thank you guys for joining us today. And thank you everybody else for coming out too. Love your questions and can't wait to share some more with you. See you soon.